Okay, we are live. Roby, thank you for joining me. I very much appreciate it. Now, just a few days ago, MGC Pharma released its annual report for investors. What were some of the milestones that MGC achieved in this year?
We achieved several milestones. Some of them are in the clinical side. As a pharma company, we had a big progress in ArtemiC, our product that's designed to treat the symptoms of COVID-19. We have also development in cannabis, going to start clinical study phase 2 in Israel. And on the other side, from the commercial aspect, we have improving our sales. We launched our Mercury formula into Australia and to Brazil, basically creating a much more affordable line of product that is still EU GMP, meeting our standardized, but also more affordable for patients to consume on a monthly basis. So this year has been a big step, even during this COVID-19, to take us from a commercial aspect, moving forward to a target of being cash flow positive, and our progress in our clinical to become a real leading biopharma company producing product from phytocannabinoids and leading our way as a plant to medicine strategy.
Yeah, awesome. And let's talk about ArtemiC. So obviously it's an anti-inflammatory formulation that is being designed to help with COVID-19 symptoms. Firstly, what got you and MGC Pharma interested in joining the race to find a treatment for COVID-19?
In MGC, we have 3 clinical divisions. One of them is neurology, where we have cannabis. We have the oncology, where we are doing research like the brain cancer that we announced also during this year. And one, it's anti-inflammatory. So MGC is all the time looking for anti-inflammatory agent to create this kind of product. And when the COVID started, we saw that one of the effects of the cytokine storm, it's part of the immune system, and we were looking to find a solution for it. Basically, like the race that everybody were joining, we just continued to look on the path of plant to medicine and to see how we can understand to create something that would be called a golden blanket rather than a golden bullet, meaning to create same as the entourage effect that everybody are speaking about, find several compounds that's working together to create the best effect. And in this case, we established ArtemiC, which is combined of several active ingredients, all from natural sources, that together are working to reduce the cytokine storm and to help the patient recover and reduce the risk of escalation into ventilation and oxygen need.
Yeah, am I correct in saying that the cytokine storm is actually the inflammatory response that is generated when someone contracts a bad case of COVID? That is actually what leads to more fatalities than the virus itself, is this inflammatory response in fighting the virus. Am I correct in saying that?
I cannot say because nobody knows exactly how the virus worked until today, but yes, the inflammatory or the reaction of the virus on the lungs creates the immune system overreacting, trying to reduce the inflammatory, but instead of just fighting the cause of the virus, it's overreacting into what we call cytokine storm. So it's basically an overreacting immune system work that then, instead of fighting on the main reason, it starts to fight everything in the body, and this is creating the lung failure that is then creating a collapse of the system. And basically this is what reached to the needs of ventilation, lack of oxygen, and system collapsing. There is no one system. It's vertical systems that are collapsing together. And this is why it's very hard for the doctors and the pharma industry to treat the patient once the system is collapsing. The idea is to prevent the collapsing, and by that helping the body recover by itself from the virus.
Right. And how are the trials progressing with ArtemiC? And what should investors keep their eyes out for in terms of successful endpoints? What are you trying to achieve at the moment, and how is that going?
So at the moment, the study is almost completed in Israel and India. We recruited 50 patients to the study. We released the interim results on the first 10 patients that gave us some kind of vector or indication where we hope to see or seeing the study going to. And our target was to be able to prevent from our patient groups that are taking the drug to escalate into the needs of oxygen and ventilation, and basically allow them to be treated like regular flu patients that are getting fever symptoms and then released home. From the interim result, we saw a very clear guideline or very clear vectors that shows that the patient group that received the drug has been much more clinically improved over the time of the study, rather than the patient who got the placebo, the control group. Furthermore, in the placebo, one of the patients has been needed to ventilation, so he's in a coma since a few months ago, which means that what we were looking to present, a product that helps the body and reduce the cytokine storm, and by that preventing the escalation of the product compared to placebo, is actually doing the work. In our drug group, we don't have anyone that reached to ventilation or oxygen need, while in the placebo group, we had one case that went into ventilation. And also we were able to show that in the control group, the clinical endpoint were much lower than in the drug group. In the drug group, we were able to improve much more the clinical score of the patient, which encouraging. And now we will wait for the next couple of weeks to the study to complete, and then to collect all the results from all the 4 sites that we are conducting the study, and to see what are the end results. So the investor should look for the end result of the phase 2 study, which will indicate, first of all, on the efficacy of the product, the next step of going to phase 3 in case that we met the primary endpoint and were able to demonstrate a clear success in the drug group. We'll proceed to phase 3. And alongside, we will see how we can get early registration of the product so we can commence sales while we're seeing the second wave hitting Europe and more countries going into the lockdown, increasing of numbers. In some countries, it seems to have even worse than it was in the first wave. So the sooner that we are able to demonstrate safety and efficacy, the sooner we will be able to start to provide the product to patients.
That's very exciting stuff. And not only would it be huge for MGC Pharma, obviously, if ArtemiC proves to be successful, and more broadly, huge for the world, but one of the benefits of what you're mentioning is the decrease in hospitalizations. And this was kind of the origin of flattening the curve, is a concern that hospitals are going to be overburdened in the near future. And with a second wave, that concern reemerges very quickly. So that would be enormous on so many fronts should ArtemiC prove to be successful. But on that note of COVID-19, how have MGC Pharma's operations been affected by the pandemic?
Lucky, due to our enforcing of very strict operating guidelines and moving before the second wave already to capsules stations, we're able basically to prevent the impact of the COVID-19 on our activities. Basically, MGC has not suffered from operational hiccups or losses. We're able to continue and operate smoothly, even that we got impact by workers that has been infected by COVID-19, and the environment around us make us more hurdles to deal with logistics and operating. The company was able to continue and work fluently without any hiccups.
Amazing. That's great to hear. And just to bring the conversation to Australia for a moment, as we're seeing each month, and we saw this most recently in September with the special access scheme approvals, they're rising rapidly. I think last month it was 6,000 approvals that we saw in September. With this in mind, what are your thoughts about the current trajectory of the Australian cannabis industry? Are you happy with the way it's going? Do you think it's going too slowly? What are your thoughts?
I think it's going rapidly and in the right direction. If it will go too fast, of course, it will be an issue for the industry from creating a bubble. But at the moment, I see that the industry is going in the right direction. In MGC side, we see increasing sales by 20% on a weekly basis. I think that we're going to hit our targets for 2021. As we say, our target is to reach to 5,000 patients on a monthly, 5,000 prescription on a monthly basis, which we're seeing getting it closer to this milestone. So from our perspective, the Australian market is a key market, is growing better than we anticipated. And we are happy to be leading inside this market.
Amazing. And it's good to hear. And obviously, as an Australian, it's great to hear that more and more Australians are getting access to vital cannabinoid medicines that otherwise, you see with epilepsy in MGC's case, what a huge difference cannabis can make. And in a lot of cases, it's the only medicine that can help these people. And to shift again slightly to the UK, obviously, MGC has a distribution agreement with Life Group. How do you see the UK's cannabis industry progressing?
I think that the UK is slightly behind everybody from several point of view. First of all, from capital market, the fact that capital market was lack of the ability to invest in the sector due to different reasons. Has slowed down the industry from being able to be developed. We still see UK as a next market to emerge and to be one of our key goals to part of MGC strategy. But it's still 2 years after Australia. So we're putting a focus there. We start to work with education. We're working, say, with Life. We worked also in the past with other groups. We're working to develop this market and also to be a leader in the UK market as well. But it's slightly slower than the Australian and other markets at the moment.
So what do you hope to see? I mean, you mentioned capital being an issue. What else do you hope to see in the UK in terms of getting it, say, where Australia is or where America is down the line?
I hope to see that the capital market will get the approval. So there will be more companies that are going to be listed in the UK market. Also, MGC is looking to be listed in the UK market. Such of opening to the capital market will allow more investment to go into the sector. Doctors and families that see that now it's become totally legit to invest and to deal with cannabis company will be more reluctant to prescribe or consume cannabis-based product, see it as a full legit pharmaceutical product. And this will help to change the mindset of the cannabis sector and allow to more and more doctors to prescribe, more consumer, and then it will open the market, which will lead to a larger and leading market in Europe for the cannabis sector.
And yeah, I've heard numerous times that one of the biggest bottlenecks or barriers to cannabis prescriptions is actually doctors themselves, because obviously doctors go through, a decade, let's say, of medical training. But until recently, cannabis has not been a part of that. And so when it comes to prescribing cannabis, often doctors find themselves ill-equipped or ill-informed, and they simply just don't consider cannabis as a viable medicine. So I do think education is a crucial step in changing that. And I think it is happening. I think the wheels are turning, but it is taking time. But once doctors become more cognizant of the fact that cannabis is a very viable and legitimate medicine, we're going to see prescriptions skyrocket. And I think we're seeing this a little bit, here in Australia, the approvals are skyrocketing. So it is just a matter of time, I think. And on medicinal cannabis, Obviously, you mentioned previously Mercury Pharma, the affordable medicine range that MGC has, which is performing really well. I believe you generated just over $2 million in the most recent financial year from Mercury alone. Is that correct?
Yes. The idea of creating a Mercury line was to find a way to give the same standardized product component medicine to the patient, but it's much more affordable cost. And by being able to reduce the overload of clinical studies and to create something that is more cost effective, we're able to provide it at more affordable price to the patient, which allow to increase the prescription, allow more patient to have the access to cannabis-based product, still having a standardized and compliant product. So today and next year, they will get exactly the same product, but in much affordable price.
And do you find that pricing is a big barrier for medicinal cannabis products? Do you find that people complain a lot about the cost of medicine, or you feel on MGC Pharma's side that you see a lot of expensive medicines out there and you wanted to be that competitor that offers a lower cost product?
Yes, unfortunately, the cannabis is not covered by health insurance, and therefore people need to pay it from their own pocket. But also the cannabis is usually used to be alleviate and support people that need it the most, and they will be hardly to be able to afford it. If we're talking about severe cases of epilepsy, it means that the family is all around the patient, and if we're talking about adult with epilepsy, so probably got the lack of the ability to go to have a regular job and therefore regular income. So eventually we are marketing a product that usually we see it in the market in quite high price for the groups that have the lower income. And therefore price is part of the key element to get it more available to the patient. So even some patients that have the permission to consume cannabis and getting the prescription are not able to afford it because it's not being covered by health insurance, and it's because it's got a higher price. And that's why we chose to move with an affordable line that we will be able to provide it in a better prices, and therefore we'll be able to give the opportunity also with families with lower income to have access to cannabis-based product and to alleviate with their symptoms.
Yeah, you mentioned, and this is something I've heard a lot. I've heard families who are paying, $30,000 to $40,000 for medication, and for some people that's almost their entire salary, which is so hard for them to pay. But if you have a severe form of epilepsy, at the same time you don't really have a choice. But you also mentioned briefly that governments aren't subsidizing cannabis medicines. I know this is true in Australia with the Pharmaceutical Benefit Scheme, the PBS. Do you see governments beginning to subsidize or going to subsidize cannabis medicines in the future?
We see it in Germany. There is some subsidized in Germany for compounded by the pharmacy. There is a rebate of the government. We see GW having the NHS and some health insurance in the United States also making the benefit. So we see the change coming, but it will go together with more clinical evidence. It will go together with more compliance and work with the drug agencies and the health administrators. So I think that the future will go to a place where there are health insurance covering cannabis-based products, but it will go together with more clinical data and more education across the board.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, as we mentioned, it is so difficult at the moment. I think Mercury Pharma is a great way to combat that, because I do think for a lot of those lower income families, this is perfect for them. In a world where there is very expensive cannabis medicines, there does need to be a viable, affordable alternative. And outside of CannaPill, which you mentioned, ArtemiC, Mercury Pharma, what other trials and products does MGC have in the works?
Currently, we have CogniCann also that is running a phase 2 study in Australia together with Notre Dame University in Western Australia. to help and alleviate with the quality of living in dementia and Alzheimer patient. We have also preclinical study in brain cancer, which we announced some of the results early this year with the breakthrough of being able to prevent the returning of brain cancer in vitro and creating apoptosis to the brain cancer cells using other cannabinoids rather than THCs that everybody are speaking about it, but find other minor cannabinoids that working better and without risk of psychotherapeutic effect. We're working with RMIT on preclinical study on prostate and melanoma cancer. And in our pipelines, we are working also on product for Crohn and IBS, which is one of the pathways that we are going to see in the change of schedule in Australia. It's one of the products that we spoke that it's a CBD product that we are looking to submit on the new schedule in the Australian market on the S3. And we have other formulation in the pipelines that are now in development, but we will try to achieve the point where we're having two products completing clinical studies while two new products entering to clinical studies. So all the time we will bring you a new and updated product to the market.
Amazing. I mean, there's so many things going on simultaneously, and many of them, as you mentioned, were cancer related. Do you find that it's more to do with the pains, the result from cancer? Because I think you mentioned attempting to prevent brain cancer coming back with one medicine. Is it purely or mostly to do with giving these patients a better quality of life, or are there some tumor reductive effects of cannabinoid medicines?
In our products for the brain cancer, we're looking to support with the treatment of the brain cancer and prevent it to back and basically extending the life of the patient. So it's not with the symptom, we're direct targeting the stem cells of the brain cancer and the brain cancer tumor.
Wow, that is hugely exciting. If that's successful, I mean, that is a game changer in addition to the many other things that you've got going on. And you also touched upon the growing prescription numbers here in Australia. How are they going more broadly in a global sense for MGC?
We recently got all the approval for Brazil to ship on a patient per patient basis. And we start to ship product from our production facility directly to patient home in Brazil. And one of the key elements that we are the only one who are able to do it with high THC formulation, which drive our sales for the last couple of weeks dramatically up. With on a daily prescription are being shipped to Brazil and being able to offer high THC formulation, not just CBD formulation, to the Brazilian market, and being the first and the only company who is able to do so is opening us a market of a country of 200 million people. So if we do just a percentage of the ability to prescribe cannabis, we're talking on a much larger market even than Australia eventually. And being one of the first that bring high THC formulation and have Mercury Pharma line available in Brazil, giving us the advantages in seeing the increasing of sales over the course of the coming months.
That's phenomenal. And that is huge because Australia is quite a small nation, despite being a large country population-wise. We haven't got, that many people. We've got, I guess, a tenth of Brazil. And you also touched upon, obviously, the UK, Australia. Where else is MGC operating at the moment?
At the moment, our key markets are Brazil, UK, and Australia. We're looking on more European countries, like Ireland, like Poland, Germany, which we hope to open and to get more and more sales on the course of 2021. Amazing.
And how do you see the global cannabis industry progressing, with the countries that you're working in at the moment? Do you see a sharp increase in the, say, interest and desire for cannabinoid medicines globally? Do you feel that happening at the moment?
Yes, the numbers are increasing. We see in Europe, in Germany, in UK, even in Israel, when I'm now located. The numbers are spiking high. People are getting more and more understanding about cannabis, about the benefit of it, are more reluctant to prescribe it, understand that it's a safe product. We see more and more clinical studies that supporting the safety and the efficacy, different formulation, not just by MGC, but the industry globally. And also there is a race to improve and to make the product more cost effective and more affordable. So together, when you combine more awareness and it's become more accessible, the market is increasing.
Yeah, definitely. And we see so many legislative efforts on the ballots at the moment throughout America. Obviously, New Zealand has its referendum coming up. So there is a lot of opportunity in the next 12 to, let's say, 24 months for a large-scale legalization of cannabis or a loosening of the laws surrounding cannabis. But as I touched upon at the start of this interview, MGC recently released its annual report for this year. What do you have planned and what does the company have planned for 2021 and what can investors expect to keep an eye on?
I think the first element that the investor would like to see, and same as it's the increase of sales and reaching to our target of 5,000 prescription on a monthly basis, which basically is the turning point of MGC of being break-even and cash flow positive. So this is one of the key targets that I'm hoping to achieve in the first half of 2021. The second part is on our clinical program to see the result of ArtemiC, to get results of CannaPill and progress with these two products into phase 3 over 2021. Get results of CogniCann, see more development in our brain cancer, and getting with more product into the market.
Amazing. I mean, as I mentioned before, there's so many things going on at MGC and there's so much promise with each of those trials that I think the success of any one of them would be revolutionary for the company. I don't think I'm exaggerating in saying that. But lastly, Roby, is there anything else you wanted to add? Any additional comments you wanted to make or things to mention to our listeners?
We are a simple plant to medicine company. So our goal is to provide standardized phytocannabinoid medicines or phytomedicine, if we're looking also on ArtemiC. Clinical studies is something that's taking long duration. It's not something that you do today and you have the results tomorrow. So we're investing a lot of time and effort in creating products that will change people's life eventually. And this is a key value of the company. It's a long run, but I think if we're doing it properly and getting the good results, it will be valuable for the shareholders and for the patient globally.
Brilliant answer, Roby. Well, thank you so much for doing this with me and taking the time out of your day. I know it's early there in Israel, but I hope you have a great day and I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you and speak soon.